Hi, I'm Emily from the Pencil Room Online, and today I'm going to take you through a drawing tutorial using two-point perspective. Now, if you are completely new to two-point perspective, then I would check out this video here, and that is going to give you all of the information about how two-point perspective works. There's also an exercise you can do just to really get a good solid feel for what two-point perspective is and how to use it. And then you could come back to this video. In this tutorial, we are going to draw a building. It's quite a simple building, but I'm going to show you how to find two-point perspective in your subject. I'm also going to show you how to measure angles. And then as we get through the drawing, I'll also show you some shading techniques and some texture techniques for creating different surface effects. This is going to be a full-length drawing tutorial. And you could just watch the video if you want to, but if you are serious about getting better at drawing, practice is everything. And any practice is good practice. So I would recommend going and grabbing a pencil and sketchbook and drawing along with me. So you can really solidify those ideas about two-point perspective, and also you're getting in some valuable practice time. And we're going to be covering all sorts of skills as well: proportion, angles, shading. So you're going to get more than just two-point perspective. So I'm going to be using my sketchbook. I've got a 2B pencil here, and this is a Tombow Mono pencil. These are my favourite at the moment, just because they're really sharp and really dark. So I'm going to be using this all the way through from start to finish. But you might want to start with a 2H pencil. We're going to begin with some guidelines, and ideally the guidelines will just disappear. But I am going to be using this 2B pencil. I use it really lightly, and then I'll use it more heavily when we get into shading. I've got a putty eraser if I need one, and then I've also got a ruler, and this is really just for gauging some angles. I'm not actually going to use it to draw with because I want my drawing to be a nice loose sketch. If you want more of a technical style drawing, then feel free to use your ruler, but I might just use it sometimes just to sort of get a feel for some of the angles that we're looking at. Okay, let's take a look at our photograph. Do a little bit of an analysis of this photograph, and then we'll get to drawing. So you see I've included some white space around the photograph, and that is because our vanishing points may actually end up going off the edge of our page. If you watch the other video on two-point perspective, you'll understand about range of vision and how the vanishing points can't be too close to the area of the stuff that we can see. But to start off with our drawing, we want to find this front corner here, and two-point perspective generally only works when you're drawing a box shape that you can see from a corner, so we can see this side and this side as well. And then from that point we're going to find these angles. So thinking about the cube shape of the building and bringing this along that edge and extending it right out. And then the bottom edge of that same side, there's some grass there, and sometimes that can make it a little bit tricky. You sort of got to imagine where the bottom of the building is and line that up and extend it out. And then the same on the opposite side. So we're going to start with our drawing, and once we've got that, that shows us where the vanishing points are. So you can see where these two angles cross, here and here. Those are our two vanishing points that everything else is going to stem from. There's not too many other things to add. We've got the top of the roof, there's a door, it's quite hard to see, that we'll add in. Maybe we'll add in a window somewhere as well, so we can use the vanishing points a little bit more. But you've got those two vanishing points, and then between them here, just a straight line, and that is our eye level. So you can imagine that, we are standing back from the building. We're a little bit lower down because it's up on a hill. So here's our head. So that's our eye level there. Moving to our sketchbook, we've got to think about where we're going to position this building and where our vanishing points are going to go. Now, if you want to, you could make sure your vanishing points stay on each edge of your page. So you could have one here and one here, and then we can fit the drawing in the middle. It's probably going to be quite small. You could also have a piece of paper underneath your sketchbook like I have, and then you can add in vanishing points. if you want to work on accuracy and get everything in exactly the right place. Or it doesn't matter if you can't see the vanishing points. You can still imagine where they are and make sure all of your angles would eventually converge with those vanishing points. And if you're drawing outside, that's kind of what you have to do, because you don't have other ways of putting down those vanishing points. So let's start with our center corner. I'm just going to put it just in the middle of the page. We'll see what happens with the vanishing points. Don't make it too big, because this is just a fairly short exercise. And then we need to figure out the angles of that cube shape. So we've got one that comes down here, or another one coming down this way. I'm just going to sketch them in very lightly, and then we're going to look at, well, how can we make sure we've got those right? So take a guess first. So there's a couple of ways you can check your angles. If you're outside and drawing from a subject, then you'll be holding your pencil out in front of you and you'll be tilting it around, like as if it's going around a clock face, and lining it up at the bottom of the corner and then tilting it up to meet the angle of the subject that you can see in the distance. And same with this one, and trying to get a really good feel for that angle that you can see before you put it down on the paper. Another way that we could try and gauge that angle is, if you're drawing from a photograph, we could actually imagine that there's a horizontal line that's going straight through here, the top of that corner, and then finding the bottom of the corner where we think it is underneath all that grass. Another straight line here. And then use that to try and see the angles a little bit more clearly. So if I put the angles in there and here, you see those triangle shapes that are now formed between the horizontal line. Horizontal lines and vertical lines are always really useful, because we know exactly what they are. They line up with the edge of our page. So we can use those to measure the angles against, and that might be something you do in your drawing as well. Is just try and sketch in a horizontal line, try and get it straight, and then look at the triangle shape here. You can also compare the two angles. Do you think they're the same, or are they different? This one I think might be a little bit less than this one here. But the other thing is, if they're not exactly right, it's not going to be the end of the world. You'll still get something that looks like it's in perspective. It might just look like you're at a slightly different angle. Okay, I'm going to go with those. I'm pretty happy with that. Let's get rid of all of these lines. And the next thing you can do, if you have a big enough piece of paper, or another piece of paper underneath, is draw these converging lines out, or these angles, the bottom and the top of the building out, so they become converging lines. And where they converge is going to be our vanishing point. So I've got one here. This one here is not going to fit on my page, but that's okay. We don't actually have too much to put on this side. We're going to be using this one more than that one. But even if you can't see this one, it doesn't matter. The advantage of having those visible is that can help us figure out where our horizon line is, or our eye level, because that will be a straight line between the two vanishing points. But I do know that it's below halfway. We figured that, well, I saw that when I did the very first drawing on top of the photograph. So I'm going to put about here. This is remember our head, and our body would be here. We're standing back in the distance, but our eyes would line up with about this line here. The building is a little bit higher than where we are positioned, because the building's on a bit of a hill. So we've got vanishing points, if you can fit them in. Don't worry if you can't. The most important thing is this angle, this one, and this one, trying to get those right. And then the next thing we can do is we can put in the sides of the building. And I mean, you can put them anywhere you like, really, and you're going to change the size of the building and the shape of the building. But if you want to be accurate, then we're going to be looking at, well, how does this bottom edge of the building compare with this back corner of the building in terms of length? So we've got this here compared with this here. And they're not actually too different. I mean, this looks longer because of perspective. This line here is a little bit longer than this one here. So I could just, once I decide where my back wall is going to be, I could do a bit of a check and just make sure that this one is shorter than that one. And put that in there. And then we can think about, well, how does this side of the building, the length of that, compare with the length of this side of the building here? So we've got this length compared to this length. And I'd probably say that this fits 2 times into this length of the building. So we've got this length, we're going to fit that in 1, 2, and that's where the back edge of the building is going to go. I'm going to get rid of any of the lines in here that I don't need now. And then we can start putting on the roof. So to find the center point of the roof, I'm going to put a cross in here and draw a line straight up. And then think about how high the roof comes up. And again, it's about comparisons. Now, how many times would this length of the roof fit into the length of this wall here? Let's have a look. This one, and then we've got this one. So comparing those, the roof is a little bit shorter. I should have put them closer together in the photograph, but you know, this distance here should be a little bit less than this here. And then we can also look at the angle of each side of the roof, and that can help us know if there's something that might not be quite right. You know, if we've got an angle that looks wrong, but I think mine looks pretty good. Let's put in the top of the roof now, and in theory this should match the vanishing point. I know from looking at this photograph already that the roof doesn't quite match, and it could be some kind of warping in the photograph. It could be that the actual roof itself is a little bit warped. But let's put these angles back in so we can see them. So we've got this one, this one. And then you'll see when we put this roof in, it just doesn't quite match up, but I'm going to make it match up because this is what it should be in theory. So here's my vanishing point. Draw a line towards that vanishing point. If your vanishing point is off the page, and we'll say you can't even see it, you know, you're thinking about, well, where does this one extend out to? The other one's going to extend and going to meet it. Alternatively, you just look at the roof angle and you try to gauge that independently of the vanishing points. And then we've got this angle here. You could even think about this angle in terms of a clock face. So if this is 12 o'clock, maybe this is 1 o'clock, this is 2 o'clock, then maybe this is 1:30. So a couple of things we can add here is, while we've still got our converging lines and our vanishing points, there is a door in here. It's a little bit hard to see, but I'm going to put in the top of like a barn door there, and then put in 2 verticals, or 3 verticals. We've got that one, we've got the one at the back, and then one in the center. You can make this as big or as short as you want, as long as the top of it matches with the vanishing point there. And then what I might do is also put in a little window up here, just so that we're making use of 2-point perspective. So my vanishing point is off my page. All I can do is just kind of like gauge an idea of what sort of angle I'd need to meet up with where my vanishing point would be. This is going to be the top of the window, and then this is going to be the bottom of the window. It's going to be a slightly different angle, and then put in 2 verticals. Now I can get rid of any of the lines that I don't need. So now we're at the stage where we can start adding in some detail. Hopefully you're pretty happy with the perspective that you've got there. We can put in the hill that comes behind. It can be any shape you like. I'm just looking at where it lines up with the building. I do something like that, and I'm just going to zoom in a little bit here on my drawing, and we'll start putting some shading and some texture in here. So if you can see the building clearly, if you're on a big enough screen, Then you'll see that it's made of slats, and they all come down. They're all vertical because the height plane doesn't change in 2-point perspective, only the depth plane and the width plane. And even up here, and all the way along here as well. Let's just have a little look at this roof and add in a bit more detail. It comes down a little bit here. It's got like a trim, and then same on this side. And it comes out a little bit behind the box. So all I've done is just taken that line and just brought it down just a little bit so that it overlaps the actual box area of the building. There's probably a trim around the door as well. If you want to, you could have one of these open. So you might have it opening inwards, in which case you'll have an angle here. Maybe something like that. Or you could have it opening outwards a little bit, in which case you'll have two angles, the top and the bottom of the door. Might have mine opening inwards a little bit, I think. And then we've got these planks of wood on the outside here as well, and even on the barn doors. I'm just using like a quick sort of flicking motion downwards just to put something in there. The roof is tiles, and we got rid of our vanishing points, but all of these lines here should also meet the vanishing point. So they're going to be changing slightly. So you see they'll be bigger at this side and smaller at that side as they get closer to the vanishing point. And we'll put in some tile patterns shortly. So I've got the main structure now. I can add in some shading. You can see there's a shadow that comes down here, maybe about there. So I'm going to shade in all of that using my pencil on its side. Nice soft texture. And I probably need to go in and put some more detail over top because I'm losing all my lines. And even the door, I know it's really hard to see the door in the photograph, that is shaded in as well. And to give these a little bit more detail, I'm just going to start at the bottom of each plank of wood and flick upwards. And then you could do that from the top too. Doing a couple of flicks in the same place for each one so that you don't get a hard line that looks really unnatural. As you get further away from this corner, you can let things sort of fade a little bit. They don't have to be in as much detail. I'm going to shade inside here. It's going to be dark in there. And it's going to get lighter as you come towards the outside. So these panels here aren't white. They're a little bit lighter than the shadow area, but we could add a bit of shading in there, and then actually I think I need to darken up this shadow. Then we're going to treat the front here exactly the same way as we did here. So we can put in these flicking marks. I'm using my pencil on its side so I don't get a really sharp mark like that. I want it to be quite soft. And then down. Just zoomed in a little bit there so you might be able to see a little bit more detail. there is like a strut that comes across here, and then there's a shadow underneath that. And also underneath the eaves of the roof here, there's a shadow as well. We can also just define the corners a little bit more. I'm shading this front part of the barn, but I'm not making it as dark as the shadow. And then put in those flicky details. There's a little bit of a width to this part of the roof here that you can put in if you want to, but you don't have to. And same here, there'd be a front edge and then a side edge, because it's like a long, really long cube shape. This is where you might use your pencil on its tip to get a sharper line. I'm going to shade in this window up here. And then we can add a bit of detail to the roof. If you squint your eyes, it's much lighter than everything else. Everything else is quite dark, but I do want to put, a little bit of shading in there. Don't want it to be white. And then I'm just going to create a kind of a pattern of tiles. So I've got these lines coming this way. I'm going to put most of the detail here. And then I'm just going to put in some, try and keep them parallel with this edge of the roof. Put in some edges of the tiles. So they usually go across, and then the next layer will be in the center, and then the next one will be in the center of that one. But as you come back here, they could just be sort of little dashes here and there. If you get a bit of detail in here, then all of this sort of starts to make sense. Getting a few smudges from this pencil because it's so dark. Okay, what do we need to add now? I'm going to add a little bit more shadow underneath here. This looks a little bit thin, this part of the roof, so I'm going to add a thicker line here, and then also add some shadow. The last thing I'm going to do now is just add in some grass, and then maybe a little bit of some kind of texture for the sky. Actually, I'll just darken up this back part of the building a little bit. Make that shadow have a little bit more impact. So the grass actually overlaps the building, and if you've got really dark lines down here, you might just erase a few little bits. And same around the front here, erase that bottom edge. And then I'm just going to add a few kind of flicks here and there. And the really important thing here is that you don't go like this, all the same, but that you change it a little bit. So they might go a little bit to one direction, then the other direction. There might be some little ones, and then some bigger ones. So you keep it changing all the time. And then you can also add in a little bit of shading to show that there's like some clumps of grass there. You can see there's a little bit of a shadow underneath that area of grass that obviously hasn't been able to be mowed properly. And there's a little bit of shadow on the grass from the roof, I think. We want to show the grass, but we also don't want it to be too dark, because it should be light at the top. The grass should actually be lighter at the top, than it is at the bottom of the areas of grass, which gets a little bit tricky. But even if you just put, like a few little marks in there, it gives the idea that there's grass building up there. And then we can also bring that out a little bit. So maybe look at some of these lines of grass that are coming up the hillside. Use your pencil on its side to get a nice soft mark. We don't need to cover all of the area, we're just creating an idea that all of the area is covered with grass. So you can kind of see these rows, or a pattern that the grass grows in. And that's what I'm doing, I'm sort of working along those lines. Might create another hill behind there, shade this one in. Maybe shade the top of the hillside here, just with some very light shading. So I don't really want anything to be just like completely white. This area at the moment is just all completely white. Even if I just put a little bit of shading in there, it makes a big difference. And same back here. And then you might want to pretend that there's some clouds in the sky, and just put a little bit of shading there, maybe a little bit here. This is like the bottom of the clouds where you'd see a bit of shadow in the clouds. And then get your piece of toilet paper or tissue and just give things a little bit of a smudge. Not too much. And a little bit down here too. Just to make things look a little bit more faded away in the distance. Give some texture to that hillside. And then you're just sort of up to the finishing touches, which is really just balancing out some of the areas. I think I might have got this bottom edge a little bit too high, so I'm just going to bring my building down a little bit. Make sure it's straight. And I noticed that just because I was just looking at it and it just looks a little bit wrong. So, I mean, I wouldn't be afraid to make corrections if you can see something, especially since this is just a learning exercise. And also I want to darken up this just a little bit more, especially underneath these eaves. If you've got a 6B pencil, you might bring in some nice soft shading over top of what you've done. Probably that part of the door there would be a little bit darker too, where it's bending inwards. So I'm just going to tidy up a few more little things. I might use my Mono Tombow eraser just to clean up some of the edges. I'm quite messy with my sketching, so usually end up with these like double lines and things. And I hope it's been useful. I hope you've enjoyed it and got some practice time in, and I'd love to hear how it went for you. So leave me a comment, and I'll see you in the next one. Oh, one more thing. I have a new series of classes coming out called Sketch Club, and they're really useful for people who want to learn how to draw, but who want to practice and have something to practice. Sometimes that's the hardest thing. Figure out what are you going to do today to practice, and am I doing it right? Am I practicing what I should be practicing? So there's some tutorials there that I'd love to have you along for. You can buy them individually, or you can become a member and get access to all of the videos. If that's something that you're interested in, then just check out the link in the description.